So I had a mentor early on, and I love this one, who said, don't go and do a ton of research when you can just ask me a question and get the answer in 2 minutes. And I tell that to people every day because everyone wants to be smart and go do the research. And if it takes you 4 hours, but I can give you the answer in 2 minutes, just ask me. Just ask me, I'll tell you.
My guest today is Kimberly Woodward, the VP of Legal and Chief of Staff to the Chief Legal Officer at Okta, the identity and access management company. Kim is the longest tenured attorney at Okta, having joined in 2015 as the third lawyer on a 4-person team. She went through the IPO, built the company's legal operations functions from scratch in 2018, grew it to a team of 15, and has spent the last decade figuring out what it means to be a lawyer who leads like a business operator. Kim also has a framework that 3 hats every in-house lawyer wears, a theory about winding career paths that I think is going to land for a lot of folks in our audience, and a story about IPO, always a perennially favorite topic. Kimberly, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Cece. I'm so excited to be here and talk to you about all of these things. And I'm smiling and laughing because I'm just thinking through all the stories, the IPO stories. There's so many, but we'll keep them PG, I think.
There you go. Oh, wow. That's a new one.
Usually the swearing and the people getting upset and the late nights where you're like, I think I might commit a crime, but no crimes actually happen.
Amazing. A criminally well executed IPO. All right, so let's go. So let's talk about your origin story. So I remember Okta, funny enough, I was at, I actually invested in Okta's IPO. I was at Anki, a startup at the time, and our IT guy, Alex, who I'm still in touch with, just loved it, this particular software. And I'm like, okay, when you have a software that the expert loves, GCAI, but anyways, a software that the expert loves, there's usually something good happening. So let's talk about joining Okta in 2015. You were the third attorney. There was no legal ops function. It was kind of just a lot of greenfield. So what led you to join? And then how did you, I guess, write your own JD or kind of figure out what the job was meant to be?
Yeah, I think joining a small company, a lot of people know this, right? Especially in the Valley, you join these startups and it's all very theoretical, right? It's vibes and personalities at the end of the day, really, is what it's going to boil down to. But for Okta, it's a fun story. I actually I was at a small boutique law firm. I was negotiating on behalf of a client against Okta. And the IT person was super jazzed about it. They were like, this is the coolest thing ever. I love it. Like, we're so excited. It's going to do all these cool things. It's really going to help the team. And I was like, I do not understand what you're buying. Tell me more stuff. I'm very concerned. What do they have access to? What are you giving them? He walked me through it from the tech side and got me super comfortable so that I understood it, did my calls, and negotiations back and forth. Had all the questions that I ended up inevitably getting asked after I joined as doing contracts. But I was able to get through it. We had a really good negotiation. It went well, wrapped everything up, totally done. Stepped away from that deal, didn't really think about Okta again for a minute. And then the sales rep reached out to me, of all people, and said, hey, are you looking for a job? And I replied and said, absolutely not. No, I'm not looking for a job. I'm very happy. I really like where I'm at. Like, I'm working really closely with clients. How many young attorneys get to actually go on site, talk to clients, work directly with them. I'm not going in-house. I'm good. I'm happy. And she messaged me. She's like, yeah, but just, it doesn't hurt to talk, right? Just like, we'd love to talk. And I was like, okay, fine. It doesn't hurt to talk. And so long story short, I went through the whole process, very kind of difficult because it was end of quarter for my clients, saying I can meet at calls at 7 a.m. or after 6 p.m. That's when I'm interviewing. Whatever. Went through the whole process. I'm not taking this job. I'm not taking this job. I'm not taking this job. And at the very end, after I'd met everybody, I was like, wow, I really like these people. They really are mission driven, which is very important to me. The vision is there. I believed they were going to IPO, which, everybody wants to, but you don't really know. Especially at that point, we didn't know. I believed they were. I was like, man, I just don't think I can turn this down. And at that point, it was this back and forth debate and just a really funny, quick stories. The final clincher that finally made me take this role is I lived in Mountain View at the time. Offices were in the city. And the person I was interviewing with on the legal team, she's like, oh, I live in Los Altos. I take the train every day. It's super easy. I didn't want to drive into the city. That was really the last thing where I was like, oh, I don't want to do this every day. She's like, no, we take the train. We'll take the train together. I was like, oh, okay. Well, I guess I'm going to take this job then. So if she had not mentioned the train, it's really silly, but had she not mentioned the train and said, hey, we're going to take the train together, it's easy, I've been doing it for a year and a half, I probably would not have taken the job. So, fun fact for everybody, when those things come up, you never know what's going to be that last thing that convinces somebody to join a company. In this case, it was I had a train buddy because I hadn't done it before.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, a friend of mine is an optometrist because she got, glasses as a child and just really liked the doctor. And it was like, okay, it's like you see these like life-changing things. So did you know at the time you said IPO was on the horizon, but was there any kind of like either magic or something that you sensed that, here you are 11 years later and, huge public company, long journey, and any clues you had then?
For me, I mean, because I think when you talk to companies of that size, they're always going to say everybody wants to, unless somebody really has a planned exit where it's not IPO and they're like, look, I want to grow this to a certain point. We're going to sell it. And anyone who does acquisitions knows that there's companies and founders who feel that way. And that's great. And they're usually pretty adamant, and you know that, and they're pretty upfront about it. I think everyone else says IPO, not really knowing what that means. So it's hard to assess on that. So I say that to say it's really hard to assess on that side. If somebody's like, no, we're going to sell it, like they know, they'll be really upfront with you. When they want to IPO, that's everyone else. So I think for me, the way I sensed that was knowing that the founders, I could tell from talking, when I heard from the founders and the other people who had been brought in, that they were really working towards it. They were doing the work. And that was one of the things that was key, was like, what is the growth plan for the next, whatever, 6 to 18 months for the team, for the people. And you could tell, they were putting people in place. They were planning to hire a stock administrator. Well, you don't necessarily hire a stock administrator if you don't want to be actively administering your stock. And so those were the things that really stuck with me. Also, the GC was fairly new. I joined in October, and he had joined, I think, in January or February, and they brought him in with a very strong corporate background. And he had been their counsel. He was actually their counsel who helped do the foundation documents for the company. And you could just tell they were putting the people in place who were hungry to do that, who wanted that experience or had that experience in some way. And when you see those people being brought together, it's just a good indication. Of course, nothing's promised in the world, especially when it comes to an IPO. And we were very lucky with timing, as is true with any company that does that. But, I could just feel that people wanted it. And that was key for me.
Excellent. So let's talk about the IPO. You were tapped for open source, which is interesting. So what was the issue? And then how deep did you go? And did it come up in the IPO?
Yeah, this is a fun story, and I've told it. So when people ask me about like what is an IPO like, which I get asked more often than I think is normal, probably maybe because not everyone's done it, but this is one of my like stories that's just, this is how things are crazy. So speaking of the GC, he pulled me aside one day and said like, hey, and I was super new. I'd been, a few months, I don't know. And said, I was looking at your resume and noticed you had open source on your resume. I don't know much about it. Can you sit me down and tell me like, what is this? What do you do? What do you know? Like, what's your background? And through happenstance, I had very deep knowledge of open source from my prior jobs. I had put together policies. I had put together documents. I had done all this work. And so I said, well, do you want like the high level GC talk, just talk track, or do you want me to like whiteboard this and get into it? And he was like, no, whiteboard it and get into it. And I was like, all right, you asked for it. So I did. So 30 minutes I spent telling him all the things I knew about open source, all the things I had done, all of the disclosure documents I'd put together for past companies. One of them that did operating systems. So this was really important to include this information, do the disclosures. And he just kind of stared at me, listened, he asked a few questions, and I felt like I was maybe in front of the Supreme Court, just like getting a couple questions asked, and he's just staring at me. And I was like, okay, are you paying attention? Are we good? Where are we at on this? And we end, and he goes, okay, I've learned 2 things from this discussion. I was like, okay, great. What are they? He goes, 1, I never want to hear about this ever again. And 2, you are now responsible for managing this for the IPO. And by the way, you need to go talk to the CTO, and you're going to talk to the underwriters, and you're going to manage this piece of it, and you're going to draft everything. And I was like, wait, pause. What did I just sign up for? I had no idea this was where I was trying to be helpful. Roll this back. I would like a time machine. I don't think I want to do this. But I didn't say any of those words. This goes back to the like redebating things and being like, oh, what did I just do to my life? And wearing many hats. And I was like, you know what? fine. I will, in my head, I'm like, I will figure it out. Great. Thanks. And that's where I will actually lead into this elevator story. So this is where the elevator comes in. So he says, okay, you need to go meet with the CTO and talk to him and tell him that you need to do, I said, we need to do a code scan. First thing first, we don't know what's in the code. I guarantee you, we have to do a code scan. Let's go do that. And I'd done with many clients. This was an offering that I had bundled up at my prior firm, and I was offering myself. Like I had a code scan, code review offering that I had put together because I knew this area of law. And so I go meet the CTO knowing full well, having done many of these, engineers do not want to do this. It is a waste of time for them. It is lawyers getting in their business. It is conversations they hate, and they just want to be left alone. And I get it. My husband's an engineer. He mostly doesn't want to know about legal things, and he wants me to leave him alone. Not in real life, but as it relates to like work and legal stuff.
So, and I'll pause you for just one second. So open source, for the listeners who may not be involved in the area, it's essentially if you have a certain type of open source code in your code base, the risk is that the entire code base also becomes open source. So it's basically a question for IPO, because what is a software company, the code and the kind of core of what it is can be at risk. So that's why it's an IPO level thing. All right. So with that aside, go ahead.
Absolutely. And by the way, story for another day, on a prior team, my team killed an acquisition because they had basically open sourced their code. And we were like,
wow. So it does kill deals. Okay. So both on the acquisition side, and then it can tank an IPO. So this is a big deal. So we're in the moment, we're walking in the elevator. Go.
Yeah, so I'm going to the CTO, I get in the meeting. We're not in the elevator quite yet. This is now a conference room. And I'm walking him through what we need to do. This is what it's going to cost. This is what it does. Fortunately, I'm actually very experienced in this area. I can do a lot more than other people. We're not going to outsource this. I will do this. And I could just see his face getting angry. And I could tell he was getting mad. And he was like, we're not doing this. We have so much to do. And I could just feel it because I'd done so many of these. I'd worked with engineers. And he just goes, we're not going to do this. And I looked at him. I said, we are. We're going to do this. It's very important. And we have to do it. And I think you want to go public. So we are. And we had a little back and forth, and I finally just said, you don't have a choice. We're doing it. And I kind of yelled at him a little bit. And this goes back to my comment earlier too. Voices were definitely raised. And I walked out and said, your opinion doesn't matter. It's happening. So assign somebody and get on board. And I went back to the GC and I said, okay, just so you know, I just yelled at the CTO. I think you should be aware of that. He may come talk to you, but this is why. He was, we had a normal conversation. He started getting upset, raising his voice. I raised my voice too. And FYI, that happened. So one of the many times I think I'm going to get fired from this job. GC was like, okay, I understand why. I know him. And that probably actually might have been not the worst approach. But like, thank you for telling me. If anything comes up, I'll manage it. So I'm sure they talked. I actually don't know what happened, but somebody got assigned on their side. We ended up getting the stuff. And one of the things I told him during that call or that conversation, which will lead to the elevator, was, look, I know you're going to hate this. I get it. And this was kind of towards the end before I said, look, we're just doing it. But I've done many of these. And the thing I'm telling you, and I promise you, I'm not going to lie. It's going to be painful. It's going to take time. It's going to distract your team from other stuff. I'm not going to lie to you. But what I can promise you is when we're done, you are going to thank me. It's going to take a minute. Give me 6 months. You're going to thank me. And you're going to thank me because we are going to find stuff in the code that you did not know that was there. That was a mess for a variety of reasons. You're going to refactor. You're going to fix this code. And you're going to be like, you know what? This actually benefited me and my team in a way I didn't realize, forgetting aside the legal piece of it. And thank you. I'm glad we did it. And importantly, he ended that conversation by saying, I will never thank you for this. It's like, all right, fine, whatever. I can't help that. So the elevator, this is where the elevator comes into play. It wasn't even 6 months later. Sure enough, because every time you do a first code scan, anywhere I've ever worked or anyone I've ever worked with, you find stuff that people put in there, interns put in there, just stuff. It's not necessarily bad. It's just kind of messy, right? And happens. And sure enough, he came back and he said, yeah, we did do a lot of refactoring. It was an interesting project. He did not thank me. But we were in the elevator and I said, okay, I get it. You're not going to thank me. That's okay. But you are now, this is your thanking me and saying, actually, this was a good thing. And I also think he was grateful because we did do a call with the underwriters where we covered this. And he didn't have to answer anything. I did all of that conversation for him. I think he kind of looked at me a couple times and said, Kim will take that. And so in the end, he realized that this was valuable in the end. And I knew he would because I'd done enough of this. But going into it, it was so painful. And that's what I say, those late nights in IPO, when you're working with people who've never done this before, and they're looking at the legal team, they're like, why are you want to go public? I have to build a product. I've got to sell product. I've got to, clean up these operations. We've got to put this together. And you're like, no, let's go dot some I's and cross some T's. They will not thank you for it. But it's super critical, and it's the stuff you need to have a really clean process. And to get through it, you just need to do it.
So many interesting threads there. So I learned, I was in London for a GC dinner recently, and someone told me, and I should have known this because I had lived in London, said that when people say that's interesting, they kind of mean like, yeah, I'm not doing that, or like I'm not into it. So like it's funny that came through. But is it one of these like so how did you in that moment, how did you like kind of like know how it would turn out? Like you're just like you had the experience, and then like, getting that sort of personal satisfaction or the kind of like, because I think, in tech, there's this idea of like these visionaries and, being a very engineering driven company. And obviously we talked about how Okta had a great product. And, I've been at companies where it was even like, we're engineering centered. And it was like, well, what do the rest of us do? But how did you have the motivation, find the motivation, and then, get to this point where you're kind of like laughing about it?
I would say for that one, that piece of it, it was certainly experience. I really knew how it was going to end up. I mean, I guess of course, there's always instances where things don't go the way you plan, but I had done enough of these code scans and enough reviews, and I knew engineers, and I had worked with so many that I knew it, and I could talk to the engineers. That was key too. So I do think that's a unique piece for me in this, because I have an engineer husband. I had engineer friends. When I went to even undergrad, like I lived next door to engineers. And so I had a deep background with the engineering community and could talk their talk, and not to the degree they can, of course. Like I'm not an engineer and I would never say I am, but I could at least have meaningful conversations with them. And so I think that was key. And that kind of goes to my philosophy for everything. And I think we'll touch on this later, but you can't just be the lawyer in the ivory tower who's spouting legalese at people. They don't get it. They don't, especially like engineers. They don't get it. They don't want you there. They don't need you in their business. They just want to know, because that's how engineers think, like what they need to do and how they can do it and what is the best way to do that. And they'll do it. If you tell an engineer, we have to do this and this is how and this is why, the why is key because they always want to know why. But they will do the things that they need to do. And that was part of it, was really being able to have those conversations with them and say, hey, look, I understand. And I said that to the CTO too. Like, I understand this is taking away from important work that you need to do. I totally get that. I appreciate it. But this is also important work that we need to do. You want to go public. I want to go public. We all would like our stock to be worth something. And so we have to do these things. They're just mandatory. And that was a big part of it, was really managing that part of the conversation and knowing that we get through it. And then some of it is just like, I was 10 years younger, so probably I was less tired. And also, I don't want to say naive, because I certainly wasn't at that point. I had to have my eyes open many times, but a little bit of like, well, we'll just get it done. We'll just do it. It'll be fine.
So fast forward a little bit. It's 2018. You've been a public company for a year. And I think this was when legal operations was I think Clock was founded perhaps around this time, maybe a few years prior. What did you see that made you want to start a legal operations function?
Yeah, so this is super interesting. It's something I'd already been thinking about when I joined. When I was at my boutique law firm, one of the things I helped put in place and manage was some of the law firm practice management. I got us a new billing system, a new timekeeping system, did that whole RFP and proof of concept, because we had something that was super old and I hated it. And it was mostly to help me, to be honest, but convinced, the owner of the firm to be like, hey, let's do this. And it was something I had already gotten into, was the idea of the business behind legal. And that legal, at the end of the day, is a business. Whether you're outside counsel, you're in-house, your department is a business. It is a business unit. And I'd been thinking about that. I was doing a lot of lawyer work because that's what I was there to do, doing contracts, IPO, all of the legal stuff. And there weren't very many of us, so we wore a million hats and did kind of a little bit of everything. But I'd been thinking about it for a while, and I went to our GC and I said, hey, look, I think, we need, and at this time, pre-IPO, we had also, at Okta, I had selected and put in place a contracts management system, a CLM. And because we needed it for the IPO, just to say we had somewhere to put things, all that stuff. And so I went through that process and I said, I think we need an actual legal ops department. And by the way, I think I should run it and you should move me into this role. His first response was, legal ops is not a thing. And I was like, no, I assure you it's real. I promise it's a thing. It's a real thing. And he was like, I don't think it is. And that was kind of the end of that conversation. And I was just like, well, okay. I guess that went okay. And maybe we're not going to do it, but whatever. He came back to me maybe 2 weeks, a month, not sure, somewhere in that time period, and said, hey, guess what? I talked to my colleagues, the many GCs that I meet with, all those secret GC groups that we all hear about that people are in, GC and CLO groups where they get together. And he goes, legal ops is a thing. And I was like, yep, I did in fact know that, but thank you for confirming that you now know that it is also a thing. And he said, and I'm interested, I'm kind of intrigued. I learned more about it. Why don't you put together a pitch for me on what, if you were to do this, what would it be and why should it be you? So it was kind of, and I knew him well enough at that point to know, okay, this is two things. He wants me to sell him on the idea of legal ops, but even if I do, he's not necessarily giving me the job. It might be somebody else's job. So I need to think about this in two ways. Like, I think we need legal ops, and that's not about me. And so I need to be very convincing here and persuasive because this isn't about me. And I think as a team, we do need this. The other side was, I want to do this. I want this job. So how do I do this in a way that's like, I am the one, like, yes, we need it. I'm the one who will do it. So I put together my deck. I looked at it maybe a couple years ago, and it was so embarrassing. I can't even tell you, Susie, like, I looked at it, somebody had asked for it. And I was like, oh, great, I'm going to go pull it up. Like, in my mind, it was amazing. It's this great deck I put together, spent so much time.
Compelling, yes, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, because, well, it worked, right? So obviously it was amazing.
I mean, the thing is, it's like, we run into this with AI a lot where, there was a joke on Twitter or something or LinkedIn that was like, we're an AI native law firm. And I'm like, that's kind of like just a law firm, And so like now it's like this idea that legal ops was this new thing. And it's like, of course legal runs like a business. I'm like craving, like, what did it used to be? Like the closest that I can think of was, at the law firm where I had an incredible mentor and I did IP litigation. And one of the things she said, you can bill it, but I'll write it off, but you should every just about month in the case, you should reread the full patent start to finish, and let it wash over you, so like that was cool. That was maybe a relic of the billable hour that she couldn't bill for that. But this idea of like that actually just thinking was like, enough and the rest would take care of itself. That's legal ops is not that, right? So like, I guess for you at this time, you were already a public company. What was the bulk of the work? Was it deal work? And then like, I'm imagining like walk us down memory lane of that deck. And then what is the value of legal ops look like today? I'll admit, Kim, like when you said you had 15 people in legal ops, that's bigger than we usually see. And so like, tell me what the team does now, and then a little bit of memory lane on that deck. I want to go down that rabbit hole a little bit longer.
Sure. I love the idea of a patent washing over you. I can't really visualize how that happens right now. I do have an IP background. Like I have an IP certificate from Santa Clara Law. And like the idea of a patent, the reason I don't practice IP law is because a patent could never wash over me.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, it was a pharmaceutical proteins. And it was like, she's like, every time you read it, you will notice new things. And she's correct. Like it really is like reading a classic, sure, where the entire thing that you're litigating. Like patents, I love being a patent litigator partly because it's like, you literally get to argue the meaning of words. And I'm like, I can't think of anything now in this AI world. Like when people are like, is AI and legal a good fit? I'm like, well, I've had a patent wash over me. So yes, exactly. So anyways, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm going back to memory lane. But I loved that segue because I love that because it's, or that tangent because it was amazing. That's going to stick with me for sure. Patent washer. Yeah. I'm definitely going to bring it up at some point. But so back to the memory lane, I have this terrible deck that at the time I thought was amazing and apparently was good enough. So I presented to him, long story short, and said, look, here's why we need it. Here's why it makes sense. I pulled up at the time the clock wheel. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, they still have it. It's the wheel of competency for legal operations. There's 12 areas. And I kind of used that and said, look, here's all the things that this team should do. And this is what we need and where we are right now. These are the things, these are the gaps. And frankly, no lawyer who's doing legal work has time to do it. And this is its own discipline and specialty. And then I went into the reason I think I should do it, which is like, hey, I have this background. I've already been doing this work here. I know all the legal side. I don't believe you need to be a lawyer to do legal ops, but I do believe that in certain cases it can be really helpful. In this case, it was very helpful. And so I did the presentation. He needed time to think about it. And I don't know, like, again, like maybe 2 weeks, a month later, we went and got lunch at a Thai restaurant that doesn't exist anymore in San Francisco. And that's when he told me that, yes, we need legal ops. And after talking and consulting with a lot of people, he felt like my personality, the way all the things, like I was the one to do it. So I was thrilled. Talking about the headcount, I immediately asked for 2 headcount, and that was part of my presentation. And I share this when I mentor other like starting up legal ops leaders, which is one of the key things that I did and I've done my whole time as a legal ops leader is knowing what I can do with what I have and using those core competencies to say, here's the things I can do because I have these people and I have this much time and whatever. But here are all the things I can't do. And I think that part is just as important. And this isn't just for legal ops. I think this is for business and this is for being a lawyer too. I can do all these things with myself and with this much headcount. But here's all this other stuff and it's super important, but I cannot do it. It's not as important as the stuff over here, but like it's going to become more important and we need people to do that and I can't do it without them. And so I've always kept that running tab. And one of the things I focus on too is when people on the team start telling me, we need this, we need this, we need this, I pull that back up and say, hey, I'm hearing it. It's time. And I never take on, I feel very strongly about this, take on work and just say, you know what, I'm just going to do it that I know I can't handle. I have a friend who jokes, he does Ironmans, and he jokes, why be good at one thing when you can be mediocre at 3? And it's exactly like that. I've never run an Ironman. So if anyone is listening and you don't feel that way about it, I'm very sorry. But it makes sense to me, right?
Like with Iron Man, I'm like, it makes sense they put the swimming first. And I was like, why do they do that? They're like, well, you don't want people to be so tired and, not be able to swim. You're like, all right. Anyways, okay. No, that's amazing. Like, I mean, you're amazing at all. Okay. So, all right. So you make the case, you get the head count approved too.
Yes.
All right.
So that's key. So my first 2 heads he was partially a lawyer. So he came in he's actually the person that does Iron Man. He came in to do legal work, but to help me on some of the stuff. And then I hired a contracts manager because we had a system now in place. It wasn't quite in place. We'd selected it. We were building the CLM and I needed somebody to run and manage it. And by the way, I was still lawyering at this point. So my role to start legal ops was fractional at best. And I was still doing contracts. That was true for the first couple of years for me of legal ops until we finally broke out and it became its own function. And then we grew from there because same thing, it was, as the team grew, we needed more things. We needed an e-billing platform and I needed somebody to manage it. We had more contracts we needed to add to the contracts management team. And by the way, for why my team's so large, that's part of it. Contracts management sits under me. And that's, a chunk of the team. And then as I was doing all the technology, as technology continued to grow, we had more tools. I needed somebody to come help me. Now she has 2 people under her, one person doing the general technology, working with our IT team, managing all that. And this year we just added an AI person. So now we have somebody focused solely on AI, our strategy, our tools, implementing them, keeping them on the rails, all of those things. And so it's exactly that same story. Why do we have an AI person? Well, because everyone else is busy. They all have their full-time job. Everyone's doing AI, of course. We can talk about AI. But I think people are kind of tired sometimes of talking about AI. But everyone's so busy. I needed somebody who could just think about this. I need you to just think about this. This needs to be what you wake up in the morning and you log in and sign into Okta and think about all day is what are we doing here? How are we doing it? It cannot be, a paralegal. I hear a lot of stories where it's basically a paralegal who moonlights as your AI person on nights and weekends. That's not the moment we're in right now. you need somebody who can think about this. And I can think about it a lot, but not as much as I would like. And I need that thought partner too. And so that's how I've really grown the team, is like, hey, I see this space. It needs attention. And we don't have to do it. I mean, like, that's always the argument, to say, like, if there's something more important, let's put our money there. You know, I'm chief of staff, so I really do have to manage that balance. But here's how this helps the team. This is how this frees up lawyers. This is how it, you know, makes everyone's lives better. This is why there's value. This is the ROI. And I think if you're a lawyer who can think like that and talk the talk with the other business leaders, talk the talk with the finance team, you can be a lot more successful at getting these things, the headcount and the things you need.
Awesome. Well, so we're never what is it? I'm gonna have another expression on AI. You said people are a little tired about AI. I agree. Sometimes it does feel like noise, but you've got this unique experience of having seen kind of the birth of legal ops as a function, and then now kind of AI legal ops. So I want to tell me what your charter is for this person and what they're doing.
So their charter really is to be creative and be cutting edge, right? She is actually like in Claude doing stuff. I do have a belief that, you know, point solutions are important, but we can do a lot of work with what we have in place. And frankly, it's expensive. So it's figuring out and being really thoughtful. And this is part of her responsibility. When do we need a point solution? When can we work within what we have, what's already provided that's company wide? How can we manage that? You know, 6 months ago, no one was really thinking about the bills. I think that has shifted in the last few months and news cycles. But where do we need solutions that are actually going to be legal dedicated solutions that can't be solved elsewhere? And so that's one of the things that we're thinking about really heavily, is like, what tools are very unique and that we need for us? Again, same as every other business unit. And what is our strategy, and how do we become this modern AI driven, AI first, whatever, you know, buzzword of the day you want to use, legal department? Because I really believe, you know, people have been saying, and I'm not unique, so this isn't coming from me, but humans are not getting replaced by AI. We are going to work together, and it's thinking about what is the stuff that we can offload that is so mind numbing, so painful, not a good use of time, and that we can have, you know, the tools and the systems do that, which, by the way, is no different from any tool or system we had before AI. We bought tools and systems to automate. We bought tools and systems to put processes together and to build those out so they would be more streamlined. AI is doing the exact same thing. It's just doing it faster and better in a lot of ways and can meet better needs. So I don't see any difference, frankly, between AI and old tools in that way. Obviously, there's a million differences, but in the way you think about it, for me, is this is a new technology. It's moving us forward, and how do we embrace it so that we can be better lawyers?
How do you prevent this person, or how do you empower the rest of the team when, you know, there is that? It's always a debate in privacy. I've seen this in privacy as well, where it's like, if you have one person doing privacy, is everybody else like, oh, I don't do privacy? So if you've got like this AI expert, is everybody else like, how do you still get everybody else, you know, experimenting, using it, coming up with ideas?
Well, I will say, fortunately or unfortunately, as you grow a legal team, for anyone who's done that, our legal team is now nearing 100. That does happen, and you start to see that, like, well, I'm the person. And I think that's keeping people to understand that you still need enough knowledge to be able to answer questions and know who to point to. So, like, as chief of staff, I work on that a lot, and with our CLO, for the team to have understanding of what everyone does, not a deep understanding, but a little bit, so that they can be, you know, just a little dangerous and know where to go. So one of her tasks is actually to train the team. And so we have legal AI. One of our KPIs for the year is that we're having 2 legal AI days a quarter. We did one that I would say landed with maybe the like most advanced people of the team, scared a little bit of the people in the middle, and like lost everybody at the beginning. But it was kind of nice because it scared a lot of people. And they realized, you know, I think everyone's realizing that everyone's behind. It really doesn't matter where you are on the AI curve. I feel like I'm somewhere in the like middle maybe, and I feel like I'm super behind. Maybe I'm a little above that. I don't know. But if you're doing nothing, if all you've done is had Gemini write you an email, like, it's a good wake up call to see what other people are doing and understand that you can't even understand the conversation that's happening. And so while There was a very big difference of opinion in that first one about how that landed and if it helped or didn't. My feeling on it was I thought it was a wake-up call for some folks to realize, hey, I don't even understand these words. I don't even know what an MCP is. Like, I don't even know, like, I don't know what Claude is. Like, things like that. I mean, I don't think anyone's quite there. That's probably an exaggeration. But a couple of people didn't know how to access our enterprise version because you've never touched it. So I do think some of it is getting those people to wake up and realize this isn't going away, and you need to start playing with it and you start using it and the value, and then hearing one of the things we're doing and this person's doing is pulling together all of our use cases. The beauty of AI is that everyone can do it. It's like very democratic. Everybody's getting access. We can all use it, and we're all building our own things. The difficulty, and I won't pitch for anything on Okta, but y'all can go look at our website and see what we're offering related to AI, because just FYI, Okta secures AI. And my marketing team can now love me. But it's really hard to know what people are doing because they're just doing it on their own. They're building it, they're doing it, and it's super cool. It's really helpful. It would help other people. But unless they tell somebody about it, no one knows. So one of the things that we're working on, and I won't say it's easy, it's really hard because actually people, especially lawyers, don't always want to share their brilliant ideas. But we're trying to figure out what are the things that we can then build for the whole team. Okay, you have this really cool idea. It's helping you do one thing, but if we extrapolate that and we build it for the whole team, it can actually do 20 things. And you're not going to build that because that's too hard, but my person on my team can do it. So that's that is the ultimate vision. We're working on putting that list together, but people are doing really cool stuff. And we're trying to get people to help and work and teach each other. So it's a little bit of experimentation. It's a lot of creativity, and it's a lot of encouraging lawyers to share, and non-lawyers too, because we have a lot of, non-attorneys on the team too, and legal professionals, but share the work. Lawyers are not trained, from law school to share their work. So that is something we're also fighting against. We have a really good culture on our team, so I think it's better than other places. But I hear from my colleagues elsewhere, I talk to them, and they're like, nobody wants to share their work because it's their brilliant genius thing. And I think on the other side too, I know for myself, I'll just be a little vulnerable for a second and say, like, I don't want people to judge me either, because I don't, like everyone else, I'm learning. I don't necessarily know what I'm doing, and I don't want somebody to see it. With the person on my team, we did one live where she's like, just show me what you're doing. Show me how you're building it. I was trying to build an agent, and I was like, oh my God, I don't want you to watch me. You're going to judge me, and I think I'm stupid. How am I going to do this in front of you? And she's like, I'm not going to judge you. I want to see how you're thinking about it. And I think it's that vulnerability to be willing to say, like, let's learn together, and we're all going to make mistakes, and you might feel silly or dumb or whatever, which is really hard for legal people, but that's okay. Like, everybody is learning this.
So you said a couple things. So you mentioned, I think you used the word terrified, but you said half the team was scared in this training. So that's a good segue. So first of all, plug, of course, GCAI. We do these classes, and we've gotten pretty good at this. So if you're hearing this and like, oh my gosh, how do I run a legal AI hackathon or a prompting party or whatever? Like we offer that. So reach out. But secondly, this idea that people are terrified of AI, like you have this framework for just in-house in general, and I suppose it extends to ops as well. That there's kind of three hats, right? The lawyer hat, the human hat, the business hat. Let's just throw in a technologist hat. Someone who comes to your training and doesn't know what MCP is, there's worse things. They're not stupid. Like what, so how do you bring the humanity, and then tell us about this hats framework?
Yeah. And I think, just to lay that out, I think sometimes as lawyers and any business person, you forget that we're all human beings, right? And so that's one of the hats that I talk about putting on, is the human hat, is remembering that we are just people, right? Like even the CEOs of the world, and you see, this is one thing I really respect from this younger generation. We were just talking about this. I'm going to do a big tangent for a second, but I was talking about this with a senior attorney on the team literally yesterday in the office. One of the interns reached out to him and just slacked him and said, hey, I'm thinking about, I might want to do law at some point. Can we meet? Oh my God, we were joking. We would have never done that. No way. When I was young, would I have messaged a junior person or a senior person on the team and been like, let's go get coffee? And they do that to the CLO. I get them too. And it's like that gumption and that willingness to just take that shot, shoot your shot. I think that's what the kids say. And to just do it. Like, I love that, because at the end of the day, we're all people. We're just humans.
Yeah. Well,
Like,
that was a powerful realization for me and led to me to become a founder, was having worked for founder CEOs who were really, sort of larger than life, right? I worked for Bezos, and then I worked for Kyle Voda Cruz and, Amjad at Replit, and working with them closely enough to have that realization of, like, they are humans, right? They want, their latte, or they want to be able to do their cold plunge, whatever it is, like, just like, or they have, um, they can be bored in a meeting, they can whatever, all these kind of very human things. And I mean, the fear one in particular, I feel, I tell this story a lot, that my mom, grandma, and great grandma were all teachers, and this idea that, like, lawyers are really smart. I actually think that's like a huge boon for AI, is that, like, now, what is it? The hottest new programming language is English. And so, just like you showed that, a quarter of the room was able to go ahead and create their own workflows and things with AI, I think that's, um, being able to show up and be and make people not feel like so scared, I think it sounds like maybe you did a second one, and then it was like this, like you threw them in the pool. So did the second training go better?
yeah, well, so I will share briefly. Like, so that was actually the first one we did. It was before our offsite. So we have a legal global summit offsite that happened in Montreal in May, and so we did this, like, I don't know, a week before, 2 weeks before, and it was kind of to wake them up, because there was a session where at tables they were going to brainstorm together. And so it was a chance to realize, like, no, you need to engage with this and you need to know these things. And so, and now we are doing more virtually, but it was right before that. And people came up with really cool ideas. And some of the ideas, like, and they didn't need to know this, we're already planning to implement, we already have things in process. But that was the point, was to collect everyone's ideas. And even if we were already working on things or thinking about them, they had nuances to that we had not thought about. And so the way that worked, it was really fun. From a suggestion of somebody on the team, it was like Shark Tank, basically. We called the panel the Counsel. And so ultimately we got to ask them questions. The final three that were selected through votes, the top three, they came and did a presentation. They got one night to prep that together. Shockingly enough, most people, anyone who did a deck, used AI, as I fully expected them to. And they were really good. It was fun. People were funny. They got to pitch it. And we picked one. And the winners all got some, we have points here that you can use to go buy stuff. So everybody got points who on the winning team. And I actually ran all over Montreal a few days before and made little gift bags. They all got a gift bag too of Canadian stuff, some like candies and syrup and things. And then we're gonna build it. So the thing won, and we're literally putting our money as it was where our mouth is, and we're gonna build that thing. So it was really exciting for people to have those conversations in person, live with the whole team, and really kind of work through that. And that's where I talk about that human part, right? Like, we can all sit there and brainstorm and be on a screen and all those things, but sitting in a room together and really thinking through it, and thinking through, like, what could we do to help this team? How could we make things better? And I would say most of the presentations and most of the ideas weren't things that were going to benefit most of the people at that table, because we'd mixed up all of the different legal groups. They were things that maybe at that table was going to benefit one person or nobody, but they were things they knew would benefit the legal team broadly and would have good impact. And those were the things that ended up being the winners, for sure, the top three. So again, that human aspect of, like, get out of yourself, get out of your day to day, and think about, like, what is going to help us collectively. We're all humans who just want to work together. And whoever it is, whether it's a leader or that junior person who's reaching out to you, like, they took a shot because they're just a human trying to reach out to human to get some help. And I think we forget that as we become leaders, and also especially in the legal profession.
I love it. So let's talk about the business hat for a moment. You're a big proponent of lawyers learning how to read a P&L, of kind of thinking about the cost of things. Let's look at the psychology a little bit of, like, when you're deciding, you mentioned matter management, but you're deciding how to staff something. For us, we at GCAI, we are not the cheapest legal AI. We are competitive, and now we have case law, so I think we're certainly a good value. But we have people very regularly tell us that, we should charge in a month what we charge in a year, that their ROI is immediate, like, very stuff like that. But one of the points that came up, or that I think has caused me not to want to be cheaper, and is actually, possibly reflected in different business models that we may have go forward, is that companies are used to paying more for better legal services, right? Like you might decide, okay, we're going to gold plate this. We're going to go with a, Am Law 5 firm, or we're going to, I talked to one GC that had an FTC matter, another, and was just like, we're going to use, a very expensive boutique as opposed to something more cost effective. And that decision point, like how do you make that as a company? And then knowing how to read a P&L is obviously like maybe it's table stakes, but like how do you turn that into legal decisions?
So the business side for me, I'm going to tell a quick story because I think it really shows my evolution on this. Because I didn't come into this, I don't have an MBA, I didn't come into this with a business background. I didn't be like yes. So I used to say, and now I tell people to never say this, and I would like go back and slap me for saying it in the past. But I used to say I went to law school, not math school. People would like put things with numbers in front of me. I'd be like, I don't know what is this? Like, take it away. I don't know this. That is not my background. Go away. And I realized, and obviously moving into legal ops and then the chief of staff role really helped that one, this is stuff we should know. Like it is part of our business as lawyers and especially as legal leaders. And as people on the legal team, you should want to know this. You should want to understand how the business works that you're supporting and like what those things are. And in running your legal team and your legal business, you need to know these things. It's incredibly important. And so I still hear I'm doing this GC boot camp through CHIPS, and I've slightly admonished a couple of the people who've been like, I don't know numbers, I don't do numbers. I'm like, well, if you want to be a GC, guess what? You do numbers. Stop saying that. Take that out of your vocabulary. Because I used to say it all the time. And when you talk to business people, you do numbers. you just do. And by the way, you probably know a lot more than you think you do. You're just nervous about it. It goes back to that human element. You don't want it. You feel like I'm not an accountant. I'm not an MBA. That's fine. Nobody's asking you to be. Nobody thinks you are that. But you know enough, and then you can ask questions. Again, we're all humans, and say, hey, I don't know that piece. Can you explain it to me? The number of times I've asked my FP&A team, hey, I don't get this. What is that? It's a lot, and I think that's totally normal and natural, and you should do that, and that's how we learn. Nobody knows everything. So anyways, that's all to say that learning that stuff and understanding, what it, the number of lawyers who are like, I don't know what ROI even stands for. Those are the things like you need to learn that and understand, especially if you're going to be leading a team or managing budgets, to understand like what are you really getting for this value. And the reality is all business units and all companies are doing more with less, especially the legal teams. We are all being pressured to do more with less. And so it's figuring out where is the ROI, right? Like this thing, everything you do costs money, whether it's using outside counsel, buying a tool, hiring headcount, getting a contractor. What is really going to give you the bang for your buck? And that's sometimes it's not the cheapest thing. I think we all know this from our personal lives. When you buy the cheapest thing, sometimes it falls apart in, a month. And now you're just buying the same thing again. You're like, damn, had I bought the more expensive thing, it would have lasted me. And now I've just wasted money. And so that is the calculation I'm constantly doing. And I'm trying to impress upon my own team and the broader team and the folks I mentor to say, like, you have to do this calculation in your head to say, what am I trying to get out of this? And that's the same thing too. People buy software, and I don't think we've been super guilty of this, fortunately, where they're like, there's all these features. It's so cool. Well, are you going to use those? I don't know, but they're cool. Okay, well, then they don't matter. So you just bought 20 features, they're bundled, that's amazing, but you're not going to use any of them. And sure, they're free, they're bundled, but you are paying for them. Nothing in life is free. And so what do you really want? If this is all you want and you don't have any plan to grow in this, get the best value and the best deal you can get for this, because this is the thing you actually need. That's the thing you actually want. And people forget that because they see the shiny things and they're like, but this is shiny. I'm like, it is, but are you going to use it? No, so who cares? Who cares that it's shiny?
I think the usage metric though is an important one where I think what you're asking is like, are you going to use it is important, but I actually think like the feature sprawl, like, so we at GCAI, we've been able to win a lot of deals against more featureful benchmark products because people use the core thing so much. Like essentially like this idea of like implementing it into your workflow and like doing that. But like let's take a non-AI example. Let's take an example of like you're staffing an employment matter and you're deciding on counsel. What do you advise your people?
So that's so hard because, and I'm just gonna I know you want me to get deep into it, and fortunately I don't have to deal with employment, but it's always for me. It's like, the first thing is what can we do with what we have for anything? What can you do with what we have? We got in-house attorneys. Can they do this? Okay, no, they can't because it's a jurisdiction that we just don't have somebody we don't know. It's it's the Netherlands, whatever, you know.
Yeah,
I say
yeah.
that because dealing with the Netherlands, I don't want to hire anyone there ever again. Nobody hold that against me. It's very difficult. But okay, we need an expert. Like, we don't have it in house. So, but step one for whatever it is can we do this in house? Do we have the skills? Do we have the tools? Same with software. Everyone wants to go buy the bespoke tool that does that thing. Okay, but do you have a tool that does 90% of that thing? Do you have a tool that does 70% of that thing? Can you bridge that gap, or does that 70% get you close enough? Because, by the way, does 70% of the thing you want, and you were only going to do 80% of what the bespoke tool did? Well, okay, you only have a 10% gap. Is it really that important? And people forget this. And so these are the things that I like always query my team about, like when we're going to invest and we're talking about ROI, is what does that look like? So, but let's say we can't do it in house, like we don't have the skills, we don't have the tool, we don't have the whatever. Then it's okay, what do we really need to do, and where do we get the expertise? But at the end of the day, my opinion is, once you've decided what exactly we need and what exactly that is, you got to stay within budget. So I'm not going to say you can't do that, but then to go get the best thing you can get for that money. So if you know we have to go out, we have to get this thing, this is what we need, we understand what it is, we have a budget. Okay, now go get the very, very best thing you can, because now you want to, going back to my story about like if you buy the cheapest thing and it falls apart, you want the thing that's going to really give you that ROI, and that's going to be the best thing in that space. Now, assessing that is difficult, right? Because the price tag doesn't always determine how good something is, but that's where, you know, me having a team that does that and having somebody dedicated to tech who goes out and does our RFPs and runs them and stuff, we really pressure test all these things when we're working on that.
I love it. All right. So let's talk about careers for 1 second. So you've obviously had this incredibly varied career, have strong points of view across a lot of things. What has kept you at Okta? And then you're also part of Chips. So we had Malin Yen on the podcast. She's, you know, definitely an incredible idol, has moved beyond being a lawyer, but still has a lot of those lawyer qualities. What's kept you at Okta, and what's next for you?
So what's kept me at Okta, and this, shockingly enough, probably not shocking, is when I interview people, because I do a lot of the interviews for the legal team and cross-functionally. That is like the number one question people ask me. They're like, why have you been here so long? And on one hand, I think they're just curious. On the other, it's a real question. When you're joining a company, you want to know, like, if somebody stayed, that's a good sign. Yes. And the answer for me, and it's really honest, is it's been like being at multiple companies. You know, I was here pre-IPO. We had an IPO. We've grown a ton. Not many companies make it to where we're at right now, to be honest. And so, like, I've always felt that I was learning and growing. My role has shifted. My prior GC, who was here when I started, left 4 years ago. And when he did, my colleague actually took over. She was the succession plan. And it was a new thing, right? It was like getting a new leader. We, you know, did a lot of work to work on the team and restructure and move it to the design structure she wanted for the org. And that's kept me here because I haven't needed to go somewhere else to get that growth and that opportunity. I know that's not true everywhere, but it's absolutely been true at Okta. And something that I've always enjoyed about our culture here is that you can always raise your hand, and it goes back to the IPO, right? Like, some of it was thrust upon me, but you could always raise your hand and say, hey, I really want to do this thing. And people have been supportive. And I think that kind of environment has really allowed me to get a lot of experience and growth that I didn't need to go elsewhere. And so I think for me, that's been unique, where a lot of people, you know, they hit their cap and they're like, I'm not growing and I need to go elsewhere, which makes sense. For me, what's next is definitely, I want to take on that head of legal GC role. I'm working through that right now. I was, as some people say, very brave. This goes back to being wearing that human hat. We had an offsite 2 years ago. We did a leader AMA, and somebody asked, what does everyone want to do? You know, something along those lines. And I went first. I said, I want to be a GC. That's the plan. Like, that's where I'm heading. That's what I want. That's the next step. And it was really interesting because people were shocked that I was willing to say that in front of all my colleagues, in front of the CLO, in front of the whole team, and that it wasn't this quiet behind the scenes thing, because more likely than not, that's going to mean leaving Okta at some point. And they were just shocked. And it's one of those culture things that we've tried to build on the legal team, myself and the CLO, where it shouldn't be shameful to talk about what your next steps are, and that they might not be here. They might be somewhere else. And that's okay. Like, we have people who are CFOs now who have left our finance team, and like, they get bragged on. It's like, look at how many CFOs we've made.
Yes. Yeah.
It's
No,
like,
my GCs that have worked for me, I'm so proud of it. Like that
oh,
go on to be GCs. It's incredible. And it's the mark of a good leader. And sometimes, the company can't give that. It was always, and it could just mean other projects, right? So like at Amazon, it was like, okay, the company's growing fast enough that they encourage people to move from AWS to Kindle to, retail to whatever for that reason, that it was like to be able to grow and do other things. I love it. Awesome. Well, let's like dive into lightning round. So lightning round, what is a book, mentor, or podcast that has shaped how you think?
man, that's supposed to be a lightning round question. I would say I had a mentor. I'll tell this story. So I had a mentor early on, and I love this one, who said, don't go and do a ton of research when you can just ask me a question and get the answer in 2 minutes. And I tell that to people every day, because everyone wants to be smart and go do the research. And if it takes you 4 hours, but I can give you the answer in 2 minutes, just ask me. Just ask me. I'll tell you.
I love it. Yeah, you're not shy for sure. I love that. So, what is your favorite lawyer skill?
I think persuasion, for me, is because it doesn't matter what kind of business you're in, what you do, like being able to persuade people is very helpful.
You said giving you a mic is a mistake. I hard disagree on that, but what is the topic where that is most true?
So it's funny because that came up in the prep for this, but it's kind of two reasons. One is I'm pretty loath to give it back, so I tend to hang on to it. So that's one. That's the main reason. And the second one is I do have a tendency to swear. Definitely, I don't think I've done it on this call yet, and I do have a tendency to tell some off-color jokes here and there, and so if there are HR people around me, I'm always like, please cover your ears. And plus, there's always our ethics people and lawyers, and I'm like, shh, I didn't say that. Ignore me. But yeah, it's usually a mistake, but it's fun. One offsite, they got me a bullhorn. And my admin told me that was the happiest she thinks she's ever seen me. Like, when I opened it and I looked at it, she said the look on my face was the happiest she'd ever seen anyone in her life. And I loved that bullhorn. It was amazing. It was cheaper than getting mics. So we did a bullhorn. It was amazing.
Amazing. Well, look, I think let's do more events. I'm like, we'll talk after the show and do more, because I think like legal ops is like, it does feel like it's having a moment too now. And like this idea of like the lawyer journey, the IPO journey, there's so much we can talk about. We could talk all day. Like, it's been 50 minutes, but I think we can
I
call
know.
it.
I saw the time and I was like, we could just go on forever. I love this.
Amazing. All right. Well, Kimberly, this has been such a lovely conversation. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, and thanks for the time, and thanks for having me.
That was Kimberly Woodward, the VP of Legal and Chief of Staff at Okta, and one of the most energizing conversations we've had on the show about what a legal career looks like, about legal ops, about AI, about microphones. Whether you're leading a legal team, working inside one, building the tools that power them, head over to gc.ai to see how the most forward-thinking folks in legal are doing their best work. Follow Susie and friends wherever you get your podcasts, and check us out at gc.ai. See you next time. Thank you.